I'm told I speak rather softly, so please raise the volume up on your television if you're going to watch this program. Home, sweet home. Perhaps we can make our home, Winsted, great again. Government is designed to work very, very slowly. So we better get started now. So pay attention to these programs. Think big and spread the word for the next election in November. Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, episode 3, Make Winsted Great Again. This process will take many years, probably 10 or 15 or 20 years, to get the balance back into this town that has been ruined over the last 10 or 15 years. A lot of work is necessary. Boards and commissions need to be replaced. But I've been asked to talk about a few things tonight by many people in town, especially students at the college. And the first one is the art of the deal. A lot of people are confused now by Donald Trump's approach, his Wharton Business School approach to managing America going forward. So people have asked me to talk about this a bit at a very high level. And I'm going to use a simple example that everybody can understand, whether you've been in business or not. And that's selling a home, purchasing a home, selling a car, purchasing a car, and things like that. The first thing you do is decide what you think you want to charge for the car or the home, or what you want to pay for the car or the home. And then you go in and you begin to negotiate a deal. That's called the art of the deal. Now, if it's a home, somebody will say, here's how much I would like to pay for the home. The owner will say, no, that's not good enough. We want more. And then you'll say, after having it inspected, oh no, there's a lot of problems with the home. It needs to do this, it needs to do that. You need to repair this, you need to repair that. It's appraised at this, or it's appraised at that, or it's assessed at this, or it's assessed at that. And you begin to negotiate. And the other party may come back with a counteroffer or a counter proposal. And then that goes around and around until you finally agree. Now, what Donald Trump's doing now is he's putting out all his ideas publishing them for all to see, unlike some of the things that were done in the past, and let everybody come out of the woodwork and criticize and make suggestions. So his putting out the objectives is called management by objectives. And all of the commotion you hear on his health care plan or anything else he's doing, his wall down in Mexico, that's called management by exception. Everybody will come and they'll say, here's what we think it should be. You forgot this, you forgot that. Will you please add this? Will you please add that? And then it goes back and they think about it. President, the House, the Senate, and they change it. And they try to make it more acceptable to as many people as possible, as many factions as possible. That's called the art of the deal. Eventually, they'll come up with a plan that most people can agree with, or they won't. And they'll have to live with whatever gets approved by the House, the Senate, and the President. Now, there's all kinds of people that are in pressure groups around the country and the world that have ideas and want to see things happen in a different way. In Donald's case, it's mainly the Democratic Party, but it's also certain people in his own party, the Republican Party. Now, in Winsted, we have the same thing, a little different. We have people in charge that haven't been running the town very well for many years. It's out of balance. It's going downhill, getting worse all the time. And as I said on the last program, people are leaving through the green wall that surrounds our town and our city because they can't afford it here anymore. And the green wall is blocking people from coming into town that want to do business here or live here. The poor test scores don't help any because we have one of the few schools in the state that has 2 superintendents, 2 principals, 2 this, 2 that. You know, it's crazy, but that's the way it is. So you've got one school pulling in one direction and the town pulling schools in another direction and the state involved in the middle. So no deal is getting done there. That's kind of stuck. Been trying to negotiate between the groups for years and haven't been very successful. Gilbert actually went broke back in the 50s because they didn't manage their money wisely. That was left to them by William L. Gilbert. And all the other towns that used to come to our town to school left, making it more expensive for the people who live here. Well, anyway, there's a lot of dealing going on at the presidential level. And there's a lot of confusion going on at the Winsted level about what the town wants to be and do. Although the backers of a tight green wall are in power throughout all the commissions and committees and will be for many years. So I'm doing this just trying to help while I'm around, but I don't expect any real progress here in Winsted. I think Donald will make a lot of progress because he has control of the Senate and he has control of the House of Representatives, in theory, and he will have the Supreme Court eventually as well. He'll probably be in for 8 years. A lot of people think he won't make it, but I think he will, because once he gets the momentum going, he's going to please a lot more people than perhaps the last president did. People who mean business, and people who want to provide jobs, and people who want to make America great again. Now, it's a little tougher in Winsted because the excellent town manager we have now does not have any control over the finance board, the school systems, the selectmen. They're voted in by the people, and most of the people, although very good people, don't really understand what's necessary to make Winsted great again. So they're just leaving. And it's very, very hard to attract replacements to the area. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that a bit so you understand that all this is part of the process of making America great again. And Bob Geiger, our town manager, while he's here for the next few years, has to try to make Winsted great again without the power that Donald Trump has at the national level. Same problem. Set objectives. Get everybody to agree to those objectives. It's harder for Bob than it is for Donald Trump because of the state of our town and its history and its future. It's easier for Donald because, again, as I said, he has the House of Representatives, Senate, and will soon have the Supreme Court, and he'll be able to start rolling. He will be listening to everybody, and he will try to balance whatever plan he's putting into place for whatever he's doing, whether it's the wall, whether it's replacement for Obamacare or update of Obamacare or whatever, providing jobs, businesses in America, all the things that we need to do in Winsted as well, except we need to knock our wall down instead of build it up. We need to redo the POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. We need to redo the planning and zoning regulations. We need to replace many of the people on the committees and commissions that were put there by the people who erected the wall around the town. There's plenty of work that needs to be done. That's why I say it's going to take 10 to 20 years. As Tony Michikowski told me when I first retired, and I had a few meetings with him to try to understand how politics works at the local level. Now, Tony himself was a Democrat for many years in the House of Representatives from Torrington, but he always voted, and what the best interests of Torrington were, to grow the grand list, to provide business, provide jobs, because he was a businessman and he owned a restaurant. And then when he stopped being a representative, he worked down in Hartford as a page boy and all kinds of things in his older age because he was in love with the system. He was known as Mr. Route 8, and he was known as Mr. Lottery, still pretty well known to this day. Now, I want to talk a bit about the schools tonight because that's 65% of our budget. And I also want to talk a bit about the future of the schools in general. And before I do, I just want to tell you that I was one of the early presidents of Internet Systems Corporation down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, backed by top venture capitalists in America until the company was sold. And I went to Telerate Corporation. So I know quite a bit about the Internet, more than most. The Internet is starting now to replace many, 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 many things. Businesses are changing. Stores are closing because people are buying things online all the time. There's all kinds of apps now that you can use to buy things. The world is changing big time because of the Internet. Schools will change as well because more people now, and there are less students all the time because families have less children. I think Winsted, the average is about 0.9 to 1.2 or so children per family now. When I was in 8th grade, the average was 6. There were some 10, 11s, and only 1 or 2 3s. We averaged 6 children per family. Others were more. Some others were a little less. There was no homeschooling. Nobody homeschooled. There was no online education. Nobody had computers or applications or anything like that. So if I go way up high in the air now and look down, over 50 years or so, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, more people will be going online to get their education. The online applications will be able to correct students as well as teach them. For example, in the language, you'll be able to speak into you can do it already, into the application, and if you say the wrong thing, it'll correct you. And it's easier to learn a language that way. You don't have to go to local school anymore for that. Same with music, same with all kinds of things. Well, that's what's going to kill the schools, kill the unions. Now, there'll always be some schools for people who need special attention. But the unions are the strongest union in the country now, and they will be killed by the internet over a long period of time. Like all unions, they get too powerful and don't keep a balanced view in mind. I read the papers nowadays and I see all the towns are getting killed by the cost of education one way or another. Now, as you know, Donald Trump has appointed somebody that wants to have more private schooling, vouchers and things, which I think is a good thing. We have some now. People in Winsted take advantage of that. We pay for it, but they take advantage for it, and they get vouchers to go to other schools. If they go to a Catholic school or schools like that, they don't get any voucher. They have to pay for it. Their parents have to pay for it. So that's limited to the people who can afford it, and it's also limited to people who can go to the school and stay within the rules. Anybody who doesn't take any money from the government, like say the Catholic schools, they don't have the same rules. They tend to have better grades, but they can also discipline. They cannot accept children. Same with a lot of the magnet charter type schools. So over 50 years we're heading in that direction. And that will balance things a little for us, provide a better education for people. There'll always be tutors. There'll always be some teachers to help people. When I go to the library at the college locally, I see that all the time. Some people need special attention for certain things and not others. They're all very bright, but they need help. So that's the way we're going with the schools in the long run. In the short run, we've got Gilbert pulling against the town in a way. We've got the town leadership trying to pull against Gilbert and set up their own school system, which they can't afford. So we're stuck. We can't get an agreement with Gilbert. We still got, and will have for quite a while, 2 superintendents, 2 secretaries for the superintendents, 2 officers for the superintendent, 2 of this, 2 of that, 2 maintenance groups, 3 if you add the town, 2 purchasing departments, 3 if you add the town, 3 finance departments. Goes on and on and on. Now, I'm not trying to say who's better. Can the town run the schools better than Gilbert? Probably not. They can't run K through 6. We've got the lowest test scores. We're in the bottom 30% of the state. We blame everybody but ourselves, but we're in the bottom 30% of test scores. Gilbert's better off than that, but they're expensive. They're very expensive, and the town can't manage their budget. The town can turn down any increases in their budget, except where the state is involved with a minimum budget requirement for the schools. So the whole thing is crazy. It's kind of a mess. And when you look at it from my viewpoint, somebody who worked their way through college with minimal cost to my parents, and I don't know of any simple answer to these problems. So the 65% of the budget will keep increasing, and then when you add in redoing all the roads, annual salary increases for the town and people and all the infrastructure they need, trucks, cars, things like that, all gets pretty expensive. Now, I'm for balancing costs. I think you need to have in this kind of a system a taxpayer association. I think you need people who will get on television and try to help communicate ideas to balance the budgets each year. You might not like some of these people, you might not like their ideas, and as Charlene Lavoie always says, if you don't like it, get on TV yourself or write letters to the paper or whatever you want to do to get your point of view across. And I agree with that. Anybody who wants to should be able to speak up. Anybody who wants to should be able to use the mechanisms that are available, like Freedom of Information Act, things like that. because you need to check and balance a system, especially one that's as broken as ours is. It needs checks and balances. It's being audited. Nobody totally trusts the audits because you have a separate water and sewer spending department, schools that are separate, and all that makes things much more difficult. And the first people to tell you that they can't find good information of the past are the schools, especially K through 6. So the whole thing's pretty goofed up from all the ups and downs we've had over the years. This management of money. They try to blame the people who take the money, but it's hard to do that because if you leave your money out on the table unattended and walk away, somebody's liable to pick it up and put it in their pocket. The whole trick is not to leave it out on the table, but to have the proper finance system throughout the town and school system so that everything's on the table and everybody can look at it and anybody can audit it and anybody can ask questions through Freedom of Information process. This is all very important stuff, and you need to do it. I don't think you're ever going to have a point in our town where qualified people are on the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, and especially the Finance Board. They're all working against each other. All the committees and commissions are not synchronized in one way or the other. So we have a lot of work here to do, and we can't expect any results. Now, when people do try to help, they're often vilified for some aspect of their character or some aspect of their background. That's usually just an excuse to convince people not to listen to them. But you have to listen to them. Whenever I see a doctor, they always tell me what I need to do, whether it's an eye doctor or any kind of a doctor, to improve my health, to stay healthy, and to live longer. They might not always be right, but they do give good advice, and you have to listen to that advice, even if you don't like the looks of the doctor, the shape of the doctor, the color of his eyes, or any of that kind of thing. They tell you smoking's bad for you and you continue to smoke. They can't do anything about that. Now, most of the advice they give, of course, doctors and lawyers and all, nobody listens to any of that. They just continue to do whatever they're doing. Now, there are some who listen, of course, but not the majority of people. They'll keep smoking, they'll keep drinking, they'll keep taking drugs, they're hooked, and they'll keep doing that kind of thing. And once when I was in a management position, I've mentioned this on previous programs years ago, before some of you people were even listening to these programs, watching them, that when I ran a company in New York City, an elderly man died on the job, and I was advised to call his wife on the phone and tell her up front exactly what happened. And if you go to a doctor and you have cancer, they'll probably say, "We're sorry, but you have cancer." They won't beat around the bush. Don't beat around the bush. They'll tell you, and then they'll tell you what you need to do to help correct the condition, avoid getting into that position again, if they can. And you have to listen to them. Again, no matter what color of their eyes, shape they are, whether they're good looking or not, whether they're male or female, if you don't listen, to your own peril. So all the advice you get here, you should listen, not just, but from everybody who's trying to help, check and balance this mediocre system of management that we have here. Now, at one time, I thought we might be better off if we were in a mayoral form of government like Torrington is. But the more I see of Torrington, who's not 45 or 46 mills and having to go for zero budgets and has a tremendous expense in the school system, just like we do, I don't think their form of government's probably much better. People will argue about that, but I've changed my mind over the years because I see that they have a different form of government, but they're still in the same pickle that we are. Now, they don't have 2 superintendents at school. There's a lot of things like that, but they do have a paid fire department. And they do have garbage collection down in Torrington that adds to their mill rate. And they're having trouble growing the grand list just like everybody else in the Rust Belt. So I think we have to plod along. We have to try to get more businessmen into the Finance Board, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, men or women, well experienced, and we have to try to balance our spending with our revenue. It's like everybody has to do in their family, and they have to cut down on their needs. They have to cut down on their needs if they haven't got the money to pay for them. A lot of families now don't go out to restaurants anymore, so restaurants are having a rough time. A lot of them don't even open in the evening anymore. They just open for breakfast and lunch for people going to work and people that want a cup of coffee. And more people are going to the less expensive restaurants like McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts, where they don't even have to go in the building. They just drive through. They order. Most of their business is drive-through business. People want to eat on the way to work in their car or truck, have a cup of coffee, have a donut, have a sandwich of something. The world is changing rapidly around us. We can't shop in Winsted. There's nowhere to go to shop in Winsted. Very few places. Where we can, we always shop in Winsted, but where we can't, we have to leave. Most people, especially from the lake, go to Torrington to do most of their shopping. A lot of them go over towards Hartford, and they're encouraged to do so because of the green wall we have around our town and city that keeps businesses out, especially factories and businesses that provide a lot of the revenue. And I will explain that to you now again for the probably umpteenth time. Advantageous revenue is revenue that is given to the town in taxes that doesn't have much expense by the people who pay the taxes. For example, if two people are in town and they have a nice big expensive house like Joyce and I, and they don't have any kids in the school system, then they pay advantageous tax because they use the roads like we do, and they do use a lot of the town facilities, but they don't have any children in the school system. That's true of rest homes. That's true of medical facilities. That's true of businesses that come to town. Businesses pay tax. They pay very good, profitable, or advantageous tax, but they don't have any children in the school system. The people that work in the businesses do have children in the school systems, and they have homes that they pay taxes on, rent on, and they take advantage of the school system, as long as they consider them to be good schools. Otherwise, they'll go elsewhere. They won't come to town. They won't stay in town. They'll move out. They'll send their kids to magnet schools in Hartford or some other town. They'll go to the trade schools. They'll go to the art schools in Hartford. And they'll do all kinds of things like that. So advantageous tax mostly comes from large business who also provide jobs. It comes from people who come to town to retire and pay taxes and don't have any children in the school system. Now, we need families with children, too. Nobody's saying we don't need that. Most families now have an average of 0.9 or somewhere between that and 1.2 students. Not 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 like they used to have when I was young. So it's quite a difference. Well, we have a half an hour left or so now. And I'm kind of repeating things I've been saying for 15 years or so on Charter TV and in letters to the editor and visits to various commissions, committees, and other meetings like that. When I was circulating the town more, I'm kind of not doing that so much anymore now because it doesn't do much good. I'm not even sure these programs do any good. But I'm going to keep trying, at least through this year, till we get through the November elections. Now, a lot of people tell me, Brian, we want to see you on this program more. We want to see you, like we see Jay Buttigieg and we see David LaPointe. And I say, well, they're important people, and I'm glad you see them. But you saw me for 15 years, and it didn't do much good. So I'm still trying to get the points across. I've got a studio in my house now where I do the recording. I do have a camera. I could take some pictures of myself, but I don't really want to do that because pictures of me is not the answer. The answer is growing the grand list. It's that simple. Now the town manager knows we have to grow the grand list. Steve Sadlowski, the planning director, knows we have to grow the grand list. That's the answer to our problems. And we have some serious problems here. We've got all the old roads, as I told you many times, and bridges that were built for horse and carriages. But now you have to be able to put a billion-ton truck over them. So they're very expensive to repair and take forever. We've got 2 school systems. What we really need is one school system, whether it be Gilbert, K through 12, or a town school, K through 12, doesn't matter to me. But somebody has to grab the bull by the horns and solve that problem. We also have the water and sewer issues. Old water and sewer system that will need help from time to time and needs help every year. There seems to be different agreements in town about that, whether or not the town should run water and sewer, or they should have the commission that's set up to do so, and perhaps doesn't seem to be doing too good a job. There's two sides to that story. We argued that once in the past, when the selectmen were controlled by the Democrats and they tried to take over the Water and Sewer Commission. And it was taken to the public for a vote, and the public turned them down. And the reason they turned them down is because they didn't have any faith that they could run it, water and sewer, any better than they're running the town budget. They can't touch the school budget. The state's in the middle of that. Gilbert's got its own budget, although they're very visible and they show it to everybody and they play by the rules. Town doesn't control that budget. All they can do is say no to the bottom line unless the minimum budget requirement gets involved. You probably should close another school. We always thought we probably didn't need a bachelor as well. There's all kinds of things like that that have to be resolved. So we have to do many arts of the deal. You have to do an art of the deal for the schools, but the whole town, including Gilbert and all our own commissions and committees and selectmen and finance board, town manager, everybody's got to get involved to work together to come up with a plan for success so we can get things done. The names of two of my old programs. We need the same for the infrastructure. We need the same for growing the grand list. We need the same for how we're going to handle water and sewer and their finances. I'm still not sure we've got the right checks and balances here, but we are getting closer. Now, I do want to say, as I always do, that right now you got a good town manager, a good planning director. You got a good president who's going to try to make things easier to do financially in the next 8 years or so, if he can last that long. You got Jay Case, who's a very good representative for our town and this area down in Hartford. Tries his best, gets funding for bridges and things like that, and then he's in there working hard. So now's the perfect time to find some people in town that are unaffiliated, or maybe a Democrat or two, or maybe a Republican or two. I should think that the unaffiliated should be in the majority and have an unaffiliated mayor, and they should all be financial people, because we got a financial problem. And when they tell you that emptying the wastebasket in town hall is really positive and it shows we're moving the town forward, well, that's not enough. That's called the status quo. That's what we're doing here now. Everything is status quo. We get in a new restaurant, we lose a restaurant. We get in a new this, we lose a new this. We get in a new this, we lose an old this. We get in a new restaurant, we lose an old restaurant. That's called status quo. And as long as people are flooding through the gates of the green wall to work elsewhere in the state, or other states too, and no advantageous tax money is coming in at the rate we need it to pay our expenses and balance our budget, we're not going to really get ahead. And as you know, the state is now considering cutting some of the money they give to us for schools and towns and bridges and things like that. We don't know yet because they haven't finished their budget and won't finish it until after our budget has been approved, or maybe not. If the budget doesn't get approved and we have to have more referendums, then maybe the state one will be approved by that. We've been known to have quite a few referendums here. I talked to a lawyer the other day who told me, when I asked him how much business he was doing, he said mostly foreclosure work. It's a lot of foreclosure work. Lawyers are spending a lot of time with that. I talked to a business owner the other day who told me that he's madder than heck because they changed the regulations for his properties from manufacturing industry to residential. He didn't know they were going to do that. He didn't know about the public hearing. It took him by surprise. And now he's really wrestling with his own business. I imagine there's others there in town that have the same problem. What we need to do is practice the art of the deal in all these areas. We need to work with everybody in town who has a business. We need to work with everybody in town that wants to come into the town. We want to try to manage by objectives and by exception. We want to try to find ways to help people instead of penalizing people. I can't tell you how many people, lawyers, engineers, all kinds of different business people, who told me how hard it is to work with the town of Winchester, city of Winsted. It's very, very difficult. I've had many engineers tell me, Brian, you get the permits. Once you get the permits, then we'll quote you a price for doing the job. But we don't want to get involved in that process because it's too difficult to work with people in Winsted. Now, I know Bob's going to try to change that as much as he can, but he's hamstrung. He didn't write the POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development. He didn't write the P&Z regulations. He didn't write the laws and rules that ZBA have to follow and the building inspector have to follow. A lot of them are rooted at the state level, some at the federal level. But now's the time. So, if you really want to see us grow the grand list, if you're in that small minority that does want to see it, a lot of people just say, Brian, there's no hope for Winsted. It's never going to change. It's never going to change. Well, I don't totally agree with that, although I'm beginning to think more and more that way. I think you got to keep trying. You got to keep listening to the naysayers, as you call them. You got to listen to David LaPointe and his supporters. He's got about 200 votes there in his back pocket of people who can't afford to pay taxes, can't afford the increases, are trapped and can't get out of their houses, maybe even will get foreclosed on, can't afford to pay the water and sewer bills, therefore a lot of people don't pay them. They have liens put on against them. And Jay Buttigieg, who'll be back on the air middle of March, he can muster another 200 votes. Both of them have call-ins. David has call-ins. Jay has call-ins. I don't have call-ins because I'm trying to get my message out. And I think that's more important than listening to people over and over on my program. Now, on David's program, that's what it's for. And on Jay's program, that's what it's for. So if anybody wants to call in, you can call in. And not only that, but you can see them. They go to the studio and they record their programs. And they have the phone numbers up so you can call in, ask them questions, state your point of view. Other people do that too. Around election time, you'll see them all doing that. Whether they all accept calls or not is another story. But when you call in, you always got to remember that the person who runs the program gets the last say. And I've watched many programs where people call in, various political party programs. And of course, the political party gets the last say. So I don't call into those programs. If I did, I'd use my name. Same as if I wrote a letter to the newspaper or a comment to a letter, an article. I'd use my name. I wouldn't use a pseudonym like a lot of people do, because they're afraid of the retribution they would get throughout town. I get that everywhere I go. Why do you bother? Why do you want to try to help the town that doesn't want to try to help itself? Well, the town does want to try to help itself, but as some of the leaders told me, they just don't know how to do it. They're not very good at listening to anybody. So anyway, tune in to David. He's on Wednesday nights, I think 7:30. And it'll get more exciting as we get towards the election. Same with Jay Budahazy. Tune in to him. He's trying to sell his house, and I hope for our sake he doesn't sell right away, but I also hope for his sake that he does sell, because he's of retirement age and he wants to move on. Go south where it's cheaper, easier to do business, easier to get along. When I was living in San Diego, California, and I was adding to my house, I was doing most of the work myself. Whenever the building people came around, or the permit people came around, or anybody to do with San Diego government, they always said, "How can we help you, Brian? How can we help you? How can we show you what you have to do? How can we help you get things done?" They were very positive. They wanted people to be successful, and they wanted the people to be happy and content. I don't hear that too much but from engineers and lawyers that deal in builders, etc., that deal in Winsted. So let's try to find 5 unaffiliated, maybe 8 unaffiliated, business experienced men or women. Start looking now. You got plenty of time before November. If they're in your family, if they don't have any business ties in town and they can afford, say they work for the state or something, or they have a business that doesn't do any business in Winsted, try to get them to run if they're residents here. Now, I want to remind you that people who live on the lake and in town and in Winchester that spend the majority of the year in other towns and states and are registered to vote there, they can't vote for selectmen, finance board members, board of education members, and all that kind of thing. They can't vote in those elections here because they vote elsewhere, wherever their primary residence is. For example, about 60% of the lake can't vote for these selectmen and finance board people and board of education people. Same with a lot of people in Winchester. I don't know the exact percentages, and a lot of people in town, more and more, are moving south for the winter. If they're still registered here to vote, that's okay, if it's their primary residence. But a lot of people leave here to avoid the taxes in the state taxes, so they may or may not be registered to vote here in Winston. Now, of course, they can all vote if they own property for the budget, for or against the budget, but not for the leaders. So it's up to you people in the town. Spread the word. Spread the word to people that don't watch this program. Tell them to call me if they want to. I'll send them a link to the programs. It's on YouTube. Past programs are on YouTube too. The other 2 that I did, Make Winsted Great Again, they're on YouTube. You can see them. And I send them to a distribution list of email addresses that I have, because even if the people don't live here and can't vote here, they do have friends, relatives, family that do live here. And maybe they can convince them to vote the right way this time. But it takes thinking big. It takes spreading the word. And if we don't get some good managers in here, like Bob Geiger or Donald Trump, we'll never be able to get things done using the art of the deal. The art of the deal requires everybody to get involved, to get their 2 cents in, so we can manage by objective and exception and try to grow our grand list. I don't know any business person in town that says we don't need to grow the grand list, the advantageous portions of the grand list. Don't know anybody like that. I don't know any business people that say we want to be like Litchfield. or Goshen, or Norfolk, or Great Barrington. I don't know any business people that say that. But I do hear them say we need to grow the advantageous portions of the grand list. Now, don't forget, too, we've got another big problem in our town with that state highway running through the center of town that we lost a lot of rights to after the flood when they came in and helped us repair downtown during the flood. Lost a great portion of our tax base down there. And we got traffic speeding through there. It's hard to get out of your car because if you try to get out of your car, you might get hit by somebody speeding through. The person speeding might even be a distracted driver. People don't want to park on one side of the road and walk across 4 lanes to get to an antique store or anything else, the YMCA or anything. During the busy hours, during the middle of the night, doesn't matter too much. Now, I will make one little correction here. I did talk to somebody downtown who said the Y parking problem is basically when they have events at the YMCA. That's when people shouldn't really park in the street in front of the businesses, because when people come to town, they want to park near the business. They don't want to have to walk way up to the next crosswalk or way down to the next crosswalk. They don't want to do that. So they just keep going. And they go to a place where they don't have to do that. So once again, I'll keep reminding you, listen to the other programs, all of them, listen to what they have to say, see what their plans are for growing the grand list, advantageous portions, to help us balance the revenue coming in with the expenses going out. Where are their plans? Now, Donald Trump, he told you what he was going to do. He listed off 10 or 15. He was going to build a wall. He was going to cut taxes. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. He had a whole list of them. And now, he's been in it for about 52 or 3 days. And he's already got a lot of that in motion. It's caused a big stir. It'll cause a big stir in Winsted, too. The people that have done the POCD quietly and who have changed the P&Z regulations quietly, they do have public hearings, of course, but nobody attends. Nobody knows exactly what they're up to. Nobody knows what their underlying secret agenda is. Only few of us know that. And the ones that know it are the ones that can read between the lines and who understand the ramifications of it. Those are the ones who know it, but there's so few of those around, so few of those, that they like to trumpet small things and make them sound like big things. And they don't really have any plan for any of the big things. I've been asking them for years to put revenue as the number one priority on all the finance board selectmen meetings. But they won't do it. They have a finance report where they talk about expenditures and things. They talk a lot about spending and sticking to the budget, or why they're not sticking to the budget. But there is no talk about growing the grand list. Now, they will tell you if a new store's come to town or if they're selling a building, but there's no plan. If they had a plan, then they could do the art of the deal and keep you posted at every selectman or finance board meeting where we stand against the plan. And then people could give them more feedback, and they can marshal more resources together, and maybe that would help. Maybe it wouldn't. A lot of people think it wouldn't. That's probably why they don't do it. Now, you're getting into what's a politician. Well, a politician is not, most likely, in Connecticut and in Winsted, not a business person. They don't understand how to run a business. They only want to consider the political ramifications. We don't want to do anything that might hurt our chances of getting elected again in November. They want you to think one thing while they're doing another. And I've always said that on this program. and my previous programs. Say one thing, mean and do another. Have secret agendas. We want to make this town like Great Barrington. Now, I haven't checked into Great Barrington to see if they're growing the grand list or not up there, but I have been there and I looked around and I see that they have a big parking lot in all four corners of their town. They don't have speeding traffic going through the center of town. They have more crosswalks, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of pros and cons involved in all this. It's not simple. Maybe we could be like Great Barrington. We don't seem to be heading in that direction. And I'm not even sure that's what most people want to be like. And getting on the roads to travel to work every morning towards Hartford or towards Waterbury and etc., that's pretty tough stuff nowadays with all these distracted drivers, speeding traffic, terrible weather conditions in the winter, that kind of thing. Now please get out there until November and help your town. Checking around town to try to find good business experienced people to run for these offices in November. Maybe they could be your relatives, they could be friends, they could be acquaintances, they could be friends of your friends, or acquaintances of your acquaintances, or just people you meet at clubs, at the library, in the restaurants, downtown at either Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's. I get a lot of my feedback not from call-ins on TV. I get my feedback by going around town talking to people. I talk to everybody and they all talk to me. Now, there's a couple that are hard to talk to because it's like talking to a brick wall. So I don't bother with them. But most people are pretty open, pretty happy to have a conversation. Some have seen my programs, some haven't. But you can do the same thing. Try to excite people. Get them excited. A lot of the people at the college, of course, they are interested in this kind of thing. The teachers tend to be very, 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 very liberal. Don't really understand business. But the students, they all want to get ahead, and I try to encourage them to study and get a job while they're going to school like I did. Because you learn more often at the job than you do in school about a lot of things. Now, other things you learn in school, you don't learn them on the job. But many things you do learn on the job. You learn how to deal with people. You learn how to talk to all kinds of people. You learn how to handle abuse. And you learn how to accept congratulatory comments. So get out there, go around town, try to get your club, your church, your people you work with in your organizations, anywhere, or play sports with. Try to get them excited about getting good people onto the finance board, the Board of Education, and the selectmen during the next election. Now, some of the other people that are running for office, they don't matter that much which way you go. They don't necessarily need business experience. But that finance board, that's the key. That'll be the key to our success, and we got to operate while we got somebody like Bob Geiger, Donald Trump, and Jay Case to help us at the state and federal level as well as locally. The Board of Education, of course, is very critical, and that needs to be turned upside down. You really need some financial people on that board. It is out of balance, out of whack. There's one or two on there that are good. The rest of them need to be thrown out in November. So anyway, I'm going to sign off now. This program will probably go 2 weeks, so I'll see you again in a couple of weeks with a new program. Maybe some new news will be out by then. Good night. Home, sweet home. we can make our home, Winsted, great again. Think big. Spread the word. And let's make Winsted great again in this very important election year. Vote for experienced business candidates. In fact, insist upon them for all the boards and commissions in November 2017. Are you qualified? Do you do business in Winsted? If not, and you have a business orientation, consider running for office.